Hello and welcome you all. Today I'm having Matas Rastenis with me. Matas is staff software engineer at Uber's developer platform, and he's going to share how Uber evaluates, deploys and measures the best AI tools to make developers as productive as possible. Let's dig into it. Oh, and of course you can watch the whole conversation on Spotify, YouTube, and now even on Apple Podcasts. Also, Matas' job description changed and he got a very cool promotion, so give him a shout out on LinkedIn. Let's go. Welcome to the podcast, Matas.
Thank you so much for having me. Thank you.
I wanted to make an episode about the topic that I guess most companies are onto right now, which is how to augment the workforce, how to really get most of the AI tools and how to really distribute them onto the workforce, onto the engineering people to make most out of it. So I'm really glad to have you here and talk about your work at Uber.
Awesome. Thanks for having me. Shoot away.
Before we dig into that, maybe we could have a quick introduction to who you are and what your job is.
Sounds good. My name is Matas Rastenis. I work at Uber. I work specifically in the developer platform organization of Uber. So we help engineers be more productive in any way we can. Nowadays, that means enabling AI, as much and as fast as we can. Scaling engineers' leverage to new heights, to where they can now author 2-3 times X more code than they could before. And I work on a variety of different things that include coding assistance, automatic test generation tooling, AI guardrails, and background agents as well. So things you can launch and sort of leave or chat with on your phone. So you don't have to have your laptop even open to code. That's the overview.
Interesting. There are so many new technologies, so many new tools, so many new AI things coming out at the moment. If there's something new coming out next week, what would the workflow look like when it comes to giving it to the people, really making the most out of it? Do you have a top-down approach or just engineers free to choose whatever they want and you have a bottom-up? How does it look like?
Yeah. So we found success in gauging sort of the popular interest and the vibes, if you could say, I could call them that, out on the interwebs. So you can imagine, X or Twitter sentiment, other companies adopting tools. We try to stay at the very forefront. So if you have a big wave coming on, there's usually, Hacker News articles. We've got a really sort of plugged in team that essentially forwards new, interesting leading lab posts immediately. So you get within an hour, whether, Opus 4.6 dropped or something. Or if there's someone OpenClaw releases, you also get in the team channel itself, you get the piece of news. So you can read them. I read the news and we need to get on this, or maybe this is, overhyped.
Do you have specific criteria on how to evaluate whether you want to dig into a certain topic or not?
Yeah, that's a really good question. We sort of have this funnel. It's not fully built out yet, but the idea is at the very top of the funnel, you have sort of popular sentiment, and then you can look at, for example, benchmark websites. So we have, Sweetbench. There's another one that's, I forget the name of, that do daily and weekly and monthly tracking of different, agentic CLIs, X different models that those CLIs can run on. And if you see, for example, a new offering, I don't know, from China, like DeepSeek popping up, you might want to validate through public benchmarks. So they run a bunch of bug tasks against, say, the Linux repository or Chrome or something. And then you get a good picture and a good initial filter. So you can stop, if people say it kind of sucks, you cut it off there. And then the bottom of the funnel gets into internal benchmarking, which is you take, sort of larger, or Uber's repos are large in scale. So you take tasks from those repos specifically. And they also, it's not an open source repository, so you can't just clone the repo and build it. So as an example, you have a lot of companies offering background agents now, but all of them depend on the companies providing compute by themselves to the background agent. So what happens then is we can't actually leverage it because our repos are not hermetic. They can't be built outside of Uber's infra that easily. You can't test, can't run, and a bunch of other problems. So that just crosses out that whole class of agents. Even though on the open source side of things, they seems to be working fine, completing tasks and whatnot. So that's the sort of middle layer. It's automated benchmarking for on the internal side of things. And then the third level would be just user like focus groups giving, a set of power users the tool, seeing what they think. If the feedback is negative, it's also likely that no one else will care. Like, why do we even bother investing in this?
Yeah.
If the feedback is positive, or very positive in the case of some tools that we had recently, you get a, we just start pushing it. So like make it available to people. And then perhaps if the adoption curve is not steep enough, you can do workshops and hack days and whatnot.
Let's say people are really actually using it. Do you have sort of KPIs like measuring developer productivity or the outcome of using those tools? And what are these?
Yeah. So the classic OKR or sort of metric that is predominant or used to be predominant is essentially diff count or code change count. So, or GitHub PR count. And there's various submetrics like how many of your code changes are X size, so that you don't have like a bunch of small little nitpicky changes. But to zoom back out, if you look at a group of engineers and some of them are adopting a certain tool and that metric goes up, you can say at least that they're producing more code changes of certain size. That's a good proxy metric for productivity. It's not actually, it's not connected to the end goal of the company, which is shipping more features, improving the app. But it's a proxy. And we've been trying to link, there's some interesting work going on to actually link that proxy metric to a more concrete, like, hey, these features were shipped because of these code changes. So then you can look at feature velocity and like essentially map more towards like a actual gross booking value outcome, as opposed to just looking at, diff count and assuming that it will result in better outcomes for the company. So that's one. And then there's other angles you can look at for just optimizing the engineer's time spent developing and doing other tasks. So things like tracking how much they spend on docs, are they like reading the meeting notes, for example? This goes a bit outside of coding as well, but do they spend a lot of time in ticketing systems, creating tickets? Do we need to help them with that? This is sort of really early. That tracking is a complicated system to set up, but we hope that it will enable us to even spot bottlenecks that we didn't know existed before. Like, why is someone spending so much on, this Google Doc or like a Jira issue? I can imagine, Jira being like a pain point for some people, but I know that there's things that we don't even know that are bottlenecks that we're trying to discover.
Can you walk us through like what maybe right now the workflow is for an engineer? Like, what type of augmentation have you already implemented in the developer experience when it comes to delivering features?
Yeah. So we have a lot of different tools. I don't have a way to flash like a graphic of everything we have, but from the very beginning, like planning and designing stages, you've got your AI augmented prototyping tools. So you've got Figma available.
Well, if you have a graphic, we could just put it into the episode later on. That's what I'm always saying, at least. But in the end, I'm already forgetting to put it in.
Yeah. Gotcha. I'll see if I can pull something up. But anyway, for designing, you've got your Figma, your Lovable, whatever. We have this new explosion of POC capability now to where, you can bring a whole quote unquote working product or like a demo of a product into a meeting, as opposed to like a vague idea or like a SketchUp in Excalibur. So that's a very fun new capability that's unlocked because the cost of them is so low now with agentic coding assistants. But yeah, so past the design stage, you've got AI enabled ticketing systems now. So you've got Linear, for example. You can do, instead of going through the web UI, like messing around with creating a ticket, you can do in Slack at a Linear, make a ticket for this item. That's pretty cool. And then past the design stages, when you get into actual coding, we have, it depends on user cohort. So the most, we have, power users and sort of more regular engineers or regular AI adopters. For power users, the predominant sort of pathway to develop now is agentic CLIs. So that splinters into a few different offerings. You've got Cloud Code, you've got Codex CLI, and for the real, like, massively parallel work streams, the power users are able to parallelize those agents through something like a Tmux terminal manager, to where you have, let's say like 6 of those agents working for you at the same time. They've got notification set up, so they notify you, the engineer, when they're done, so you can go and switch back and continue work. And we are trying to enable engineers to just tell their agents what to do. So like, hey, publish my change.
Mm-hmm.
And then the agents themselves need to have the know-how. So whether it be skills through Anthropic's products or commands, cursor and whatnot, to let's say create the PR or the diff, so that the engineer doesn't have to spend more time like making a description, calling the CLIs to do it. It's just done for them. And if they queue up enough actions, like, hey, make the change, review it, produce a report of how you validated it, maybe do an end-to-end manual test, and then publish the change, you can queue up, let's say, an hour and a half worth of actions, to where now that whole session is parallel and just running. It's like a teammate that's just doing its work. If it gets stuck, it alerts you, and you go check on it, and it gets to essentially an end state. So that's power users. And general AI adoption, I think so far we've seen Cursor and sort of agentic IDs be a primary interface for those. So you can imagine VS Code plus any of your extensions, Copilot or Cloud Code as an extension in VS Code is nice. Cursor, of course, a product as well that's AI enabled. So you do your coding there. It's primarily single-threaded still. So you have your code view, you can do your editing yourself, and then you have a chat session. You can have multiple chat sessions across multiple files as well. But it's and like orchestrating the multiple like repository implementation details is also a topic that more of the power user cohort gets into and really resolves it, so that you can do multiple issues on the same repository at the same time. Meanwhile, the regular users kind of stick to a single repo or maybe a couple clones. And then past that, we have at diff review or PR review time, you have tooling to go over your diff and spot bugs. So we have our internal tool called UReview. We have Cursor BugBot running, so spotting things that you might have missed in your publishing steps. And then that's it. Then you get a human review and you land the code change. And then there's really quickly final sort of side tangent that it's going to grow a lot in adoption in the coming year or two. And we actually expect it to become the primary means of editing code. And that is background agents. So you, instead of even creating your own development environment, unless you're like the superpower user that knows, essentially orchestrates background agents already in your environment, like DevBox, you have a UI or you start a Slack or something, you add an agent and you start a task. So like give it an issue or something. And then it does some work in the background for you. And then 40 minutes later, you get a notification for, hey, I'm done. And you can like zoom in, edit the code, follow up, give it another hour of work to go. And then if you have a nice interface for those, you can have like, again, 6 to 10 of those agents running in parallel. It really gets into more of the human limit of how many parallel things you can think about at the same time, because you need to like have this Rolodex of ideas. Oh, now I'm working on this thing and now I'm working on something else, and just be able to do that to support this workflow. But we're hoping that engineers will train that muscle, because to maximally lever up, like we have this nascent concept of like the parallelization factor of an engineer. How many work streams can you do at the same time? So instead of just doing one synchronously like you used to do before, maybe it's now 2, or perhaps for power users it's 3, like a median. I know some people can go up to 6, 7, 8, 10, whatever. But it's really hard to even keep the agents busy for that long, because you're going to have to review and think about what the problem is to even unblock those agents first. So yeah, that's the overview there.
That's crazy. Like 7 to 8, what was it?
Yeah, 7, 8, 9, 10. Again, you have these agentic sessions running. You need to have enough projects under your scope to even give them that much work, and they have to kind of all be separate. You can't say, hey, I'm going to make this feature that depends on something like agent 2 can't work on something that agent 1 hasn't already finished. That's a problem. So agent 1 will be kind of stuck in the like a complex feature development flow where it does the one thing and then it'll have to do the follow-up on that, maybe in a different code change. But again, if you are expanding into new verticals, trying new features, you can just take up a completely new work stream that doesn't depend on anything previous and just have that be your second agent. So 8, 9, 10, yeah, ambitious. You're probably doing not necessarily coding tasks at that point. This is going to be like your rewrite, documentation updates or whatever else you're trying to do to clean up your code base or migrations. But yeah, certainly possible. It's just very small sort of cohort of people so far can do it.
How does a rollout look like? Because I could imagine that not each engineer is like always on the cutting edge of things and always keen to try out new stuff. Sometimes you want to just get your work done. How does a rollout look like to really get everyone on board?
Yeah. And
how do you overcome like when people are hesitant to try new stuff?
Yeah, for sure. So the rollouts, they largely follow the adoption curve for various products. It's sort of a general concept of you've got these early adopters that jump on the product if they know that it's good. They usually are plugged in themselves. So they, follow like Twitter sentiment and whatever, X sentiment. And they come to us to ask for the product. Like, hey, when can I use this? So that's pretty good. That's essentially autonomous, adoption. Or, what is it? Organic adoption. And then once you get into that cohort, we look at if the results are good. You look at posts. Well, we do a multi-channel reach out. So you can do, you have Slack channels for informing engineers. You have sort of show and tell sessions. If the product is really starting to roll, we try to do an hour of, hey, what's my workflow like? You essentially invite the whole engineering force into that whole meeting and have an engineer that's a power user show off what they've been doing to inspire and sort of show that, hey, it's easy to set up, you can do it. And we see that a lot of people follow that as if it was essentially a workshop because they're like, yeah, this looks good to me. I want to ship more features, more productive. Workshops work well as well because that's, again, the same form factor, just a little more enforced and in person. So it helps with, like, if you have multiple offices, you set up a workshop for a specific topic. I remember we had ones for Cursor, then for Copilot before that, and then for Cloud Code after that. So, whenever a new product comes along and people are interested, you set up a workshop and you do essentially the same thing. It's like, hey, here's a demo. Perhaps try to create a feature or, fix a bug or something through this workflow. And then you have an sort of an interactive audience to present your flow where someone can say, hey, I'm having issues. And then you just walk over, unblock them and continue on. And then Slack announcements, as I mentioned. You have enablement channels so that we have, emails and Slack sort of news channels that people subscribe to. And then on top of that, I think we also have sort of an engineer lead culture, which is quite nice, where you have an engineering lead, like engineer post in one of those channels to like signal boost again, like, hey, I stand behind this. I've checked this out. So that helps bring credibility to the actual tool and help people be more comfortable with using and trying it.
Yeah. Not every company has that Uber engineering culture. Like, do you have any tips and tricks on how to like engage engineers from other fields, from other companies, maybe larger organizations, to really keep up with all the new tools and new techniques that are coming out?
Yeah, for sure. I think a really powerful tool is having ambassadors for any sort of topic, not necessarily even in tech. And because the person itself that's an ambassador is likely to be motivated to show they believe in whatever that they're an ambassador for, and that really helps translate to the people that might not know about the tool or that you might want to have listened to that reasoning there. So yeah, essentially singling out, because every single organization will have a set of more like power users. It will depend, the distribution will vary, but you'll have people that are like have everything set up, and perhaps in your org the power user is someone that just set up Cloud Code, or maybe it's Cursor. that's okay, because you can use their, if they're enthusiastic about the tool, you can leverage that to broadcast out to a more broader audience, again, by just like creating perhaps a meeting show and tell. If it's a small enough company, you can also get by with physical sessions, again, where you do a presentation to like the whole office or something, and just show off like, hey, this is pretty easy to set up. I've got it working. It works a lot faster now than what I had before. Yeah, that's the initial thoughts.
I wonder how you manage costs at Uber, because like with all the different tools, it might get confusing. Like every tool has its certain pricing models and all of that. And I think there's like a tool life cycle where it gets hyped, it gets used, but then there's another tool coming along, and you have a certain percentage of people like using the old one and a growing percentage using the new one. Like, how do you manage costs with all your different tools that you set up?
Yeah, for sure. That is a real operational problem. You have, the companies that produce the tools have the incentive to just give you a bunch of seats and keep charging for them. There is a challenge in, if someone stops using a tool, how do you set up sort of proactive seat pruning and whatever else you can do to like take away the seat from the user, give it to someone else that maybe needs it. And that's some work you might need to do. For smaller scale companies, you can just get away with manually marking, like disabling users. I don't think there's a problem with that at all. The key though is, if you have, some tools provide like adoption metrics, and you can see, this user is using mostly whatever, Cursor or Claude. You can make informed decisions about the rest. I don't think, based off of our stats, that a lot of people do multimodal synchronous code editing. So like they will choose for the background editing, they might pick, an interface, and for local synchronous flows, they might pick an interface. And we had cases before where people, let's say from that prefer the IntelliJ ecosystem, pick pick up Cursor, just because the AI orchestrator is so good in Cursor. So this was like a year ago or something. But they still want to have their main ID present. So this is kind of a bifurcated flow. It's not suboptimal, but then you have to pay for the 2 seats because, again, people, that's what they find most useful. And we're trying to, coalesce into a single, more unified workflow where you don't have to context switch. You've got your favorite orchestrator, agentic orchestrator available, but it will inevitably lead to these overlaps. So seat pruning. Usage metrics, tools do expose that. Depends on where you get your inference from. You'll see who's using what. In terms of, token sort of, what was it? If
it's an outcome-based pricing.
Outcome-based is we haven't really gotten into that yet. The industry isn't yet asking for prices or like a cut of every single code change or something, code line. I think that will be kind of damaging. I mean, good for the inference companies. I was trying to lean towards whether you allow engineers to spend ad infinitum, essentially, or whether you put a cap on their spend. I think there's a strong case for letting them spend ad infinitum, but with perhaps what we found works is manual little checkpoints, like saying, hey, you've spent X dollars this month. Are you sure? Can your manager sign off? Are you like not running in a circle, like just doing random crap? Are you using it productively? If yes, go right ahead. We'll support your usage. So that's a nice little speed bump that doesn't stop the engineer, but provides us a bit more, or notifies the engineer of like, hey, be cognizant, because they might be running things that they don't even know are running, like somewhere in the background, some agent.
Interesting. For how long have you been doing this at Uber? From the very initial,
like, I think Copilot was the initial impetus of all these coding assistants. That's when we started. We enabled Copilot really quickly, and then we found that the initial Copilot wasn't really that capable with GPT-3, or what was it? Completions was one model, Codex, but chat was, I think, GPT-3 or 3.5. And we found that people didn't really trust it yet. We had this big sort of hill to climb of like people not wanting anything to do with AI code. They're like, this is crappy. But again, through outside influence or sort of the overtone window shifting towards, this might be producing good quality code, that has largely been resolved and everyone's now onboarded. I think we have like 95% of users using some kind of AI tool to augment their development workflow, which is nice. But yeah, the start, I think we kind of jumped really early onto the Copilot train, and then we built, like we had a big testing glut, and we needed a testing tool that was capable. Copilot wasn't able to provide nowhere close to the amount of agentic capability that we needed, so we built out a custom product built on a custom line graph with multiple sub-agents, or sort of a mixture of experts before that became really a mainstream concept that's even built into the foundational agentic systems.
So that was like, what, 2-3 years ago?
Yeah. It was around the time of the Copilot initial release. And
because where I was going with that question is like, I really wanted to know what was the most surprising thing that came up during that time. Like, did you encounter any like super surprising situation that you didn't anticipate?
I think we just it wasn't so much as a surprise, but the realization that the agentic assistants back in the day, you must build them as a agentic assistant provider in a way that makes them extreme generalists. So we didn't even have command execution back then. It was just code editing. But even then, you have this whole gamut of users across a whole range of open source and closed source code bases, dozens of languages, and you need to be able to operate in all of them at the same time. We had this thought of like, hey, we can build some really capable, deterministically enhanced flows. So you can imagine, we actually went that direction with Claude Code now having skills as an example, where you can plug in a script, and the script actually does some deterministic action for the agent, and it's able to like launch it and leverage it and then act on the result. That direction we realized very early is would be moving forward, because again, for a workflow to become competent, and especially within like a larger scale company, you need to plug in some deterministic flows, and that's what we were able to do with the line graph that I was talking about. So you can do like crazy, you plug in your build system, you can customize for it to fit your build system exactly. So you can do hundreds of parallel builds at the same time, as an example, instead of a one single command. And that's like Claude can't even do that today unless you build some skill. I don't think it will likely ever. Well, not ever. I will not say that. But
ever is a very strong word here.
Very, very strong word. It's probably going to be able to do it in a year. But what I'm trying to say is, like Claude still runs, even if you do parallel agents, it still runs the same build commands. You'll need to provide some skills for it to like understand how to even finagle your build system into running 100 different permutations of the same file to like try different variants, stuff like that. So extreme agentic programming is very custom, and the bifurcation that I was trying to explain, and that we realized is the generalist assistants will not like automate this away. Like this will never happen. We need to build these foundational building blocks that plug into our build system and know how to operate at Uber, and that's what we're continuing with. I think over time we found that the agentic, like the speed isn't that much of a bottleneck. So the agentic generalist assistant is kind of good enough for a lot of things, but it needs these tendrils. It needs a tendril to reach into the build system. It needs a tendril to be able to understand what conventions we have at Uber, or like search docs, stuff like that. For it to like interface with what Uber is all about and our engineering practices is very important. But that surface area is again now plugged by things like skills, which are easy to develop, easy to improve. That's that.
One question that really interests me is like, did the adaptation of agents and agent-driven coding change the way engineering teams are structured? Like, did you see a change in how the team is structured, how the team is set up, how teams behave, or like cross-team initiatives get managed?
Yeah, that's a good question. So if we call back to earlier in this conversation where I said you needed to expand the amount of threads and features you're parallel working on parallel at the same time. This lends itself really nicely to more efforts that are essentially more efforts between more teams. So you get a bit more connectivity. You've got people from a team joining more virtual teams now, at least from what I observed, meaning a virtual team is like, they're not part of a different team, but they're part of an effort that's like outside of their team potentially, but needs the involvement of their team. So then what you get is someone dedicates, let's say 10 or 20% of their time to a specific V team, but in effect, their contribution to that effort is now like 80 or 90% of what it could have been if they went in like essentially full-time onto that whole effort, but before coding assistants. So if you imagine like they can deliver with the leverage that coding assistants offer, they can deliver like full-time or even more as we get into the more leveraged work streams. You can deliver more that you could have before if you've like full-time joined that team. So that's awesome because again, you have these like whatever amount of V teams you can manage mentally, and you're pushing everything forward because it's really not you working, you're managing a bunch of agents. So you're like an engineering tech lead, I guess, that has his fingers in a bunch of different efforts, but you've got these virtual, teammates that actually like the agents that deliver on those, because someone needs to write the code and validate the code ultimately. So that's the sort of impact on the organization that I see so far.
Before we close the episode, I'm really curious if you have any tips and tricks for our listeners to really stay at the edge of tech and to not miss out on any opportunities on new things that are coming up. Like, what does your workflow look like when it comes to really being at the forefront of what is coming out?
Yeah, for sure. So I personally I'm a avid believer in the personal assistant space that's sort of popping up right this moment. So you've got OpenClaw or NanoClaw or whatever else. It's non-trivial to set it up in a secure way. So I will not recommend anyone to do it, because if you give it access to your whole laptop, there's a lot of implications that you don't want to do that.
No, don't do that, because the Mac Mini is already expensive enough. Don't.
So yeah. You either have to like completely separate it out, run it on a VPS. I know companies are now coming up with isolated environments to run these types of agents.
But then do you have the data on the machine that it takes to really get good results?
Well, the good thing is you can have it like be a super consumer of public streams. So things like let's say you have whatever the amount of RSS feeds, 50 RSS feeds you're interested in, kind of like Hacker News. That's essentially you don't need the login session for that. You don't need anything for that. If you just run it on like a VPS that's not connected to any of your data at all, it will be able to fetch those sort of surface level things. All of the labs, just let it research what to research. That's sort of a meta level thing. It's like find all the top labs, whatever the OpenAI, Anthropic, Gemini, and look at that matrix of things. Like let it run, let's say every morning or something, if you want to be really plugged in, and let it like send you a report over whatever the interface you have. And that's a really good way I found, because it can also like you would need to set up like tokens and API tokens for, let's say, Twitter analysis, like popular sentiment analysis, but you could do that, and then you have this whole like the whole thing that I mentioned at the start of the episode. It's like vibes and like sort of like vibe based understanding. You get that in a report form in the morning, which is really powerful, and you can take what you want from it. You usually get all the news, like the hour delta in that report, so I always see them. I never see anything missed, because the report is kind of large based on the amount of things that I added for it to check out. But yeah, that's probably the top thing that I found is like the most helpful. Otherwise, you just make a list and you go like once per week, like Hacker News, whatever. Google Scholar papers pop up time to time that are important to read.
Matas, thank you so much for coming to the episode. I learned a metric shit ton. It was really interesting.
Awesome.
Really glad you're here. Thank you so much. And let's talk again very soon.
Thank you so much for having me.
Thanks everyone for making it to the end of this episode. I hope you enjoyed the conversation with Matas as much as I did. If you're digging the podcast, do me a huge favor. Hit that subscribe button, drop a like, and if you're feeling extra generous, leave a review. It really helps us get these conversations in front of more people. We got some amazing guests lined up, so you definitely don't want to miss what's coming next. Till then, see you soon. Bye.